Recently, I took my running and driving mini truck and stole critical parts off it in order to get this mini truck running. And I did get it running, but it was not good. Alright, almost stuck a little. There we go. In this video, I'm going to try to bring it up to the level of being usable, which may be harder than it seems, because in the meantime, this stopped running. The starter has not been good at all. Works. Even in the previous truck. But since the last video, it seems to have gotten much worse. There are stock replacements, but they're really expensive. Right here I have the starter that came with this truck. The previous owner was trying to get it running. The starter went bad on him. He tried to take it apart to fix it and found out this is not meant to be serviceable. You have to actually peel this edge up to get to any of the good stuff in there. And I barely moved that and already broke the plastic. Last time I took the starter from the yellow truck and put it in this truck to get it going. But now that starter's gone bad. Every single starter I've seen on these trucks has gone bad. I'm thinking this is not a good starter. So I'm not fixing this one, and I also am not buying a replacement that does the same thing. I need something that works better. That replacement I found gave a brand of tractor. When I searched for those names, I found an upgrade. They came from a company that made some real good starters. It had the right number of teeth, a good amount of power, and it looked like it would bolt right up. In the picture, it looked like that one would fit perfectly. Same kind of flange, same mounting, all that. But the picture isn't the right size. 3.23 or so, 2.95. 4.45 apart, 4.785. So the bolt spacing's wrong, the pilot diameter's wrong, and then I looked at it, the amount the gear sticks out is wrong. The good thing is that the gear is actually the right diameter and pitch and number of teeth. So this part that actually does the real work is compatible. The other good thing is this starter is designed to be kind of universal. You can see that it has a pattern of holes here. That plate is just bolted onto the starter. Now this one's a parts truck, I'm planning on pulling the engine out to put into a Jeep or something like that. It'll be a lot easier to deal with the starter issue if I had an engine lying around. So it looks like the time to pull this engine out is now. I don't know why, but a lot of these fasteners have 2 nuts on them. Maybe they knew they should install locking nuts, but it was cheaper just to use 2 regular ones. We got a few little issues I've got to solve. There's a crossmember here and a cab there, so I can't go up. The transmission and the drive shaft seem to be taking up the same place. It almost looks like it'll be easier to remove the transmission than the drive shaft, because that also might solve my up problem. On this one, there's a rib cast in. So if you undo the bolt, the socket gets stuck. This transmission looks cast iron, but it also looks small. So I'm hoping it's not crazy heavy. We got a spring attached. Forgot about that. I think that's all I got left to take off. Somehow I'm caught in the drive shaft, but that's okay. Shifting to another gear helped. Transmission is out. And that is one pretty hefty input shaft. That is well over 1 inch. Wonder how heavy duty that transmission is. I elevated the rear of the truck slightly. I almost could get the engine out sideways now. But I don't think I can quite make it. I don't have any way to drag it. So what I'm going to try to do is hook on one end and tilt the whole thing to get it to go out this hole here. Almost. Not quite. I realized I already unbolted the cab before. The steering and brake lines and all that are still hooked up, but they're all in the front. So I just threw a jack under it and started tilting it. Oh, that looks very promising. That looks like it's out. Now it's a lot easier to work on. The distance from this surface to that ring gear is going to be where we need to have the pinion. It's a simple theory, but we have to get our measurements right. We don't want the teeth to touch each other when the starter gear is retracted, and when it extends, we want to engage all the way across. We have to make sure those distances are right, otherwise we're going to have some big grinding sounds. I hooked up just the solenoid side to this fancy new starter because I want to see how far the gear kicks out. I don't need it to spin. With the press of a button, I can make the gear kick out. Right about there. 1.880. 1.3 retracted. One other thing I want to check is how wide the actual gear is. Close to 600 thou wide. This gear is close to 700 thou wide. I got 100 thou extra width on this gear. With all the measuring and comparing, I've come to the conclusion I need a plate that looks similar to this, but this pilot diameter needs to be bigger. These holes need to be further apart, but also needs to be about a 1/4 inch thinner. Since a lot of this material has to be taken away, I can take that away, making the correct size nose. Every once in a while you want to stop and check on the process. It's slow, we'll get there eventually. Since this is precision work, I went with a fine pitch blade. Our adapter fits in pretty nice now. Starter's in place. That's a lot better. Other things went wrong with this truck too. Starting with the simple matter of getting inside of it. Gotta reach to the window. In the previous video, I was really happy this door handle worked. The latches actually work. It broke. Other side's broken too. Out of all the doors and all the trucks, this one right here is the good one. The mechanism's pretty simple. When you lift up here, it pushes that rod down and moves the latch. Got the outside door handle off. This is what it actuates. This arm is supposed to extend way out here. And this is where the bad design comes in, is that's a real long length, putting a lot of twisting force right on an area that's pretty small. So that is basically destined to break. I was thinking of redesigning it. The window goes right where the handle needs to go. And I like windows. So I'm stuck with a bad design, and I have to make this arm strong enough to push down on that linkage and actually open this door. Now this outer piece is cast metal, but it's not a very good metal. It's like a zinc pot metal kind of thing, something easy to cast and not very strong. But I was looking at the arm that broke off. Here's more of that cast material, but then it goes to a piece of steel. This is a bent and formed piece of sheet steel that's attached to that arm, and that's a lot stronger. So I found a piece of old steel, 3/4 angle. This is 1/8 inch thick, and I whittled away a little bit of it. It's all straight saw cuts, nothing fancy. And it looks like I can take this, slide it in here, and connect that steel arm with the casting here and make that whole thing a lot sturdier. I want these latches to be roughly the right shape before I reinforce them. They broke off pretty cleanly, so it should be easy to line them up. Just gonna do a little bit of JB weld here. This won't be strong enough to make them work, but it will hold them in position while I add the reinforcements. I'm just using a small little bit. I don't want a whole lot of excess on this, because there's gonna be metal on the outside. Don't get JB weld in your camera lens. You may have noticed I have a lot more JB weld left over, and I have the inner door handles. Right now these do work, but on one door on the yellow truck, one was broken. Right here. That leaves something to be desired. You grab the sharp pointy bit, there it goes. All that was left was this thick piece of plastic. The whole outside part was gone. So I'm thinking that's another weak point. I'm gonna reinforce it before these break. So I'm gonna scuff it all up with a file first. Make sure we have some grip here. Then I'm going to load up that corner with a good pile of JB Weld. I think that'll be some good reinforcement there. This is the final piece I whittled away here, and it's going to go right there and connect that large section to that piece of steel there. The other side door handle is an opposite. So now I need to make this backwards, which is surprisingly easy. I can line it up against the base material angle, and that one automatically goes the other direction. So I can just trace the whole thing, then flip it this way, trace this side. All I have to do is cut along the lines, and I automatically have an opposite. My opposite is made. I've got it clamped in place. I'm going to use an extended length drill bit to drill straight through both pieces. Somewhere around here, probably. One problem with drilling at an angle is they like to walk. It'd be smart to do a center punch or something to make this stay in position. Or you just keep hitting it till you get it roughly where you want it. Which is what I usually do. There we go. I've got a tiny little 440 bolt, 1/2 inch long. We'll just sneak that in here, and that'll hold all this together. Got the end of the brace welded on. I also filled any gaps with a JB Weld to keep it from flexing, and it goes to the bolt and the handle itself. So I think this one will actually hold up. Just got to pop it in here. Oh no, it doesn't fit. Anyway, that fits absolutely perfect. It does door things now. Beside the issue with the door handle on this door, it's also in poor shape in a few other ways. The weather stripping doesn't stay in at all, which really doesn't matter because there's no more glass. Looks like the window's been broken. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in this door, but only 2 hinges hold it on. So looking at the easiest way to remove the hinges, those bolts do not look easy to get to. Those look better. Then I look a little closer, that top one's partway undone. There's one missing entirely down here. Wonder how heavy these doors are. Gonna find out in a minute, the hard way. Well, not too bad. No wire connectors either. Before I put all the handles back in this door, I want to make it kind of match the truck. I even went as far as masking the window. It's gonna be fancy. Now I just have to wait for it to dry. Back to running problems. The fuel injection pump never seemed right. It always hunted at idle, and there was a clatter like it was detonating every once in a while. I thought it might be off timing or something like that. I got a comment I didn't expect that made me think about this. Someone said there's a separate oil supply for these injector pumps, and it doesn't use the regular oil that's right there that would be easy to use. Never occurred to me. I saw this little dipstick on the other truck, but I never pulled it out. There's a second dipstick. I assume that, like the intake that has multiple locations, you could hook it up. There are multiple dipstick locations. It definitely needed a different location. I'm still about a foot away from the dipstick, and I can't get to it. So I'm not sure how they intended for people to check the oil in this truck, but that doesn't work for me. I figured that would be the one to use, but I never actually pulled it out. That definitely does not go into the crankcase, and it is completely bone dry. Let's check the other truck. And there's absolutely nothing on it. It looks like the only way you can fill this, you're going to loosen this up, remove the shutdown bracket, unscrew this, and that is actually a breather. And that looks like where you fill the oil. I've got a funnel of oil going through a plastic tube, going to a smaller plastic tube, and then filling the injector pump. After I added oil to the injector pump, I stopped getting fuel to the injectors. Now I got to figure out my fueling issue. And I cracked the lines for the injectors. They're loose, and they're completely dry. So no fuel is going to the injectors at all. I bled everything I could find over here, and it really looks like I have fuel in the injector pump. Ever since I added oil to this unit, it stopped working. But I noticed something. This is the fuel shutoff lever. It moves smoothly with no interruptions at all. The same lever in my spare engine. It does something. There's something moving in this injector pump that isn't moving in the other one. When I got this truck, all the bolts in the back here are loose, so I figured I might as well see what they were doing in here. I popped that cap off. I don't know what it's supposed to look like, but I do have a reference engine. Looks just about the same. But when I move this lever, that does a lot more. And since this way is shutting off, that means if it's too far out, it's off. Comes close to level when it's all the way out. This one is starting off close to level, which means that needs to go in. Seems to be stuck out. There we go. That looks better. Huh. Locked up again. Weird that happens after I put the oil in it. Got it moving pretty reasonably well. If I pull on it really hard, sometimes it gets stuck, but when I shut it down, I'll just pull at the bare minimum, and hopefully I won't have this issue again. At least now I know to pull the cap off. The thing I don't know is this adjuster right here. When I got it, it was loose. This little one's loose too. And I don't know if it was adjusted properly. Back in my reference engine, that adjuster has a cap and a piece of wire so it can't be adjusted. Which means that adjustment's critical, but I have no idea what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to take this apart. That's supposed to stick way out. So I'll measure that one, and then I'll adjust this one to match. Now this should at least get me in the ballpark. Now that's where it should be. That's way off of where it was. I'm not seeing any indication there was any oil at all ever inside that injector pump. I'm guessing they were shipped over empty of all fluids with really bad instructions about what to do with them, like put oil in or something like that. I'm wondering if they just got engine oil in the engine, and for some reason, no one thought to remove the driver's seat, go in through a hidden trapdoor in the floor, remove the engine shutoff cable bracket by removing a breather that has no discernible way to actually remove it. Remember this tiny little hole you're working in? You have to get the wrench right about here. You have to reach your arm in and somehow get your wrench underneath that in order to unscrew this, to remove that, in order to be able to fill this. And stuff a small tube through the opening in order to add engine oil to the injector pump. Maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't have thought of that. There's definitely a reason we don't see many of these trucks on the road. Looks like there's lots of reasons. Got an IV drip running. And for possibly the first time ever, there's oil in there. Now let's hit the button and see what happens. Nothing. I want the starting fluid because it's cold and I haven't hooked up the glow plugs yet. We're back in business. The injector pump is definitely leaking, but that's not diesel fuel. That's the oil I just put in it. I'm going to clean this up and see if I can figure out where it came from. Here's a little small tube that the oil was coming out of. The end of it was below the dipstick level, so it was constantly siphoning the oil out. I checked my spare engine. It doesn't have a tube at all, just that plug where the tube goes on the other engine. This worked fine, so that can't be critical. I just took a screwdriver and bent the end up a bit so it was above dipstick level. It looks like it probably got bent at some time when someone was working on it and was lower than it was supposed to be. I found a fitting that has the same thread in the end as my breather. Now that fitting holds my shutdown cable, so I never need to remove it again. I've got a tube attached to it, and I put my breather up here. So now when that needs oil, I just pop off the breather, put in a funnel, and dump it right in. One of the biggest problems this truck had since it was brand new was fuel supply. In my last video, I already mentioned all the air leaks in these crimp fittings that aren't very well crimped. In fact, I think that's probably the biggest reason why it was barely driven at all. I think the system had so many leaks that it was mostly drawing air instead of fuel. I stole this inline pump off my yellow truck where someone had added a pump pressurizing the system, and that way, instead of air being sucked in, just fuel leaked out, which was better. This one wiggles easily and is wet with fuel. But I'm going to see if I can make this fuel system act like it was intended to work, without any leaks. I'm starting with that fuel filter. I tried to find an element for it last time, and I couldn't. But I did find the entire assembly. The whole thing was only like 15 bucks, including shipping. So we're going to put this in. But I also noticed something else about this. It came with these banjo bolts and new crush washers, and the crush washers are different. They're a metal washer with rubber inside. So the rubber squishes before it hits the metal. That'll give a real good seal. Unlike the ones this truck came with, which are just solid metal. So I'm going to redo all the lines with the new washers and get rid of this fuel pump and see if this thing will actually act like it was supposed to. I need to reuse these banjo fittings because I'm not going to buy them if I already have them. So I got to get them off this braided line. You've got to cut this crimp sleeve off, but you don't want to cut like this. The blade could go into the hose sealing surface or hit the face as the sealing washer. So what I like to do is go this way and come in sideways where I'm only going to hit the outside. No big deal if you take a nick there. Usually you don't have to cut all the way through, just relieve the pressure. Then you come with a screwdriver and pry that collar apart, using the screwdriver as a handle. There we go. The sealing surface of the fitting looks fine. We're ready to reuse it. Here's a different one I did. I actually went in too deep. You might be able to see the gouge right there from the cutoff wheel. But because of the angle I went in, the sealing surface here and here, totally fine. That gouge doesn't matter at all. New fuel filters in, all the hoses are done. Use these band style clamps they use in fuel injection. They seem to seal pretty well. There's absolutely no flex. That line is on there solidly. I do have the old pump in line here. I didn't want to get rid of this wire until I find out if the new system works. I did disconnect the ground so it won't run. After changing out those lines, I'm going to have a lot of air in there. So I'm going to pop open this bleeder and use the primer until I stop seeing air bubbles. Looks like straight fuel coming out now. I even have wiring going to my glow plugs now. Still sounds like there might be a little air in the system. It's not totally smooth yet, but it's running. And not using this pump. I know it's hard to believe these trucks have as little mileage as they do. This one has the most miles on it, well, kilometers, and it's a little over 2,000. But I know the odometer hasn't rolled over because both trucks had a full set of these Linglong tires. You can still see the little nubs on them too. These have no time on them, but they're old and dry rotted and cracked. All of them are the same, basically ready to fall apart, but not worn out. On both trucks. And after my first video, I was told that Linglong tires are available in the US. But these are a 614 bias ply tube type tire. These have not been replaced. I know that because I tried to find replacements. The other thing I found in that size are tractor tires. These are a 614 tire meant for the front of a four-wheel drive tractor, but they're exactly what I need for the rear of this truck. They're available in a 4 or a 6-ply version. I'm betting the 6-ply ones are for use with a front end loader because they can handle over 1,000 pounds a piece. The 6-ply version was about 65 bucks a piece, including delivery, but I think it's worth it. With 4 of these in the rear, the capacity is over 2 tons, and the bonus of a lot of traction off-road. I'm going through them and figuring out which are the most leaky of these old tires and changing those out, because if I have 2 good ones, I'm going to keep them on the front. And it is a little bit of effort to get them swapped over to this style. This isn't a quick process. I think the fact they're so narrow makes this take a lot longer. Oops. There we go. There's that valve stem again. Gotta make sure that valve stem comes straight out of the hole and isn't twisted to one side or the other, like it is now. I just rotate the rim inside the tire until we get just the alignment we want. And now I can put air in it. There we go. I scratched up the rim pretty good installing the tire. We're just going to erase the scratches here. Luckily they're all in the center, so I don't really have to mask it. I'll get them done one at a time and throw them on as I go. While I was installing these tires, I realized something I didn't expect. These are DOT approved. Got the date code and everything. Doesn't say not for highway service anywhere. These tires are road legal. So I could drive this thing down the street with the tractor tires on it. This is my brake pedal, which so far hasn't proven to be very useful. And now I can see there's gook inside. We got clogs on this one too. So I'm just gonna button up this master cylinder back the way it was, and we'll deal with this a different day. And today is that day. You can see what we can do with this master cylinder. It's got lots of chunks already. It's pressed in and stuck there. Sometimes, if you can push them in, they'll bounce back. Doesn't seem to be any movement at all on this one. Since I can't push this piston out from the back, I've got to pull from the front. Now those pistons have a cup in them where the actuating rod pushes on them. I'm going to run a tap into it. There we go. Now I'm pulling upward while I rotate it. And there's our piston. And there's a big pile of goop. You can see the tap got quite a bit of thread engagement on that part. So there's a pretty good grip. If the tap doesn't do it, I could have threaded a bolt in and used that to pull with. Yeah, that'll be fun to clean out. Now this is a dual master cylinder, which means it has separate circuits and separate pistons. Sometimes just the front one's stuck, because that's a part that's exposed to air and water and is more likely to rust. But there's so much goop inside here, my back one's stuck too. I'm going to do something with this master cylinder that's probably not recommended. I'm going to drill a hole in the end of it. There's already a pilot started for the center. Felt like I made it all the way through. I don't want to go too deep. My piston's coming out. Now the piston's moving, I can slide it back and forth a little bit, getting it moving a little better. I cleaned up the part of the board that I could get to. Just a little bit of goop in there. You may have noticed I have another master cylinder right here apart. This is not one for this truck. This is a standard Volkswagen master cylinder, and I took it apart because it's virtually identical to this one. So all these pieces that are corroded together, I can see how they're supposed to come off on this one that's decent. Unfortunately, this one is a bore that's slightly smaller. Volkswagen ones are available in that bore. So worst case scenario, I can buy one of these, gut it, and put the parts in there. But we're going to see what we can do with just cleaning this up first. I've got the pieces out of my master cylinder, but I do have that extra hole I drilled in it. And extra holes in the master cylinder are a problem. We got to fix that. So I'm going to start by making it bigger. Normally something like this you wouldn't hold by hand while you drill it. But this is cast iron. It just turns to dust, so it really doesn't grab and pull very badly. The next step is a pipe tap. I just use the drill press to make sure it's aligned right. Now I can go in by hand. Not only does cast iron drill easy, taps easy too. That's how they make a lot of stuff out of it. It's easy to work with. I have pipe threads deep into that part. There's a lot of material there to work with. Now I'm going to put a little thread locker on a pipe plug, and our master cylinder is good as new. Well, close enough. I cleaned everything up. One of the rubber cups was real bad. There's a few big chunks out of it. That's not going to work. But luckily, I had a parts truck. So I took apart the cylinder from the yellow truck, got the cup I needed out of that front part. The rear part's still stuck in there. We'll deal with that another day. But I was able to get enough pieces to make one master cylinder, and as long as our plug doesn't leak and those seals hold, it might even work. Without a dashboard, this truck's surprisingly easy to work on. I'm not going to reinstall the dashboard. We'll just come up with something else. This is better. Leaving these finger tight for now. We'll see if we get any fluid out of them. It'll be similar to bench bleeding, just without the bench. Oh, there's fluid. We might be able to get somewhere here. I guess more to the point with brakes, not get somewhere. Oh, got stuff coming out of the other one too. We have real potential here. And the best part is, nothing's come out of the plug in the back. Now it's time for a brake test and see if it really worked. They went on, but seemed to stick on. Reversing freedom up. They seem to work better every time. I was clearing some excess bits of plastic from the steering column, and I noticed this. This is what used to be the ignition switch here. It has a position of off, then F, then D, then Y, and then Q. Q is going to be the start position, Y is on, and then F and D, one might be glow plugs. I'm glad this thing never had an ignition switch that worked, because I'd have no idea how to use it. The original dashboard was terrible, so I disassembled it. The gauges didn't work. Even if they did work, I'd prefer units I'm more familiar with. And this one just straight up goes backwards. Cold is over here, hot's over there. If I glanced at it, I'd always get it backwards. That's the only one I want. So I only need the center part of this housing. I need to make the housing smaller. Or make a smaller housing. I'm going to need a lens for this, but I think I have one in my welder. There's a variety of sizes. That looks about right. This is 3D printed ABS. I'm not sure how it would hold up in the sun, so I'm going to make sure it doesn't get me. I found this on my someday it'll be useful shelf. This looks like it'll be useful today. Here's my final result. I made a bezel for the front that attaches with the screws, and that has a relief on it that fits that welding lens. I've got those brackets attached to the bottom for easy mounting. So we're ready to go. Just have to hook a cable back up. I bought a small set of gauges because this is a small truck, and the small ones are cheaper. Only 29 bucks with a coupon. But there's one thing I really don't like about them. Normally I rotate my gauges so the needle pointing up is the normal operating position. They don't want you to do that. They put a notch in here which locks it in and makes it go that way. I'm gonna have to fix that. Now I've got a new nut because I want these to go this way. I'm trying to figure out how to wire up this alternator. Looks like the battery terminal was disconnected and that one was never connected. So we just have to figure out these two. Of course I can't read any of it. The whole front of the engine's caked with stuck-on dirt. Ever since that was brand new, it was spraying diesel all over the front of the engine into the cooling fan. This is that little pinhole leak I found in the factory lines right by the fan. There's a little bit of dirt buildup there. Good thing we have the spare engine sitting here. We have ground, F, N, and B. The bigger diameter confirms that's the charging wire, and B indicates battery. N was not hooked up in either truck, so I don't need to bother with that. And F. F would be our field. That terminal marked F set off an alarm bell in my head. I've seen that before. Always on an externally regulated alternator. It means that this alternator isn't a self-contained unit. There's a voltage regulator somewhere. I'm betting this is the voltage regulator. But I'm not going to reuse any of this stuff because foil unfuses. And there's a big crack in this. None of this is good. I knew there were electrical issues with this truck. It looked like the switches and all the connections were pretty shoddy. My original plan was to replace all that and use the original wiring. And I did that for the starter. But my starter just stopped working. I was tracing it along. The brown wire that goes there. And this is the brown wire that was working for a long time. Well, weeks. I got my meter set to beep. Absolutely nothing. I've eliminated all the plugs and connections. That's a straight wire going right to that starter. I don't see any other junctions at all in the harness. And it just stopped working. For a minute I thought my starter was bad, but nope, the wire itself. So I'm going to do something I didn't want to do. For my own sanity, I'm getting rid of this entire wiring harness. It'd be easier to create a new one than to sort out all the problems in that. Normally I hate to throw anything away, but this thing is just a pile of headaches. And judging by those splices, I'm not the first one. So I feel good about this. I'm not even going to save the wire itself. It's all gone. The only thing left in that thing is the original battery cable. I got my starter button hooked up, and that's it. And it runs. Mechanical shutoff still works. No more mess of wiring. I left a few pigtails where I could hook up stuff if I want, like the heater, but I don't have to. But I probably want a few extra things, like the glow plugs and a charging system. I've got a shelf where I've got a lot of wire stuff, all sorts of old things left over from other projects. I think this was mostly from the bus. There's all sorts of relays and things, flashers, switches with glass fuses. I got some bigger wires too. There's a big pile of thick stuff. That's good heavy gauge wire. I'm going to dig through here for a little while. Oh, there's another stash. We'll dig around a little bit, see what we got to work with. In that pile of stuff I found a nice little relay with a bolt-on tab and a connector. And I want this to run the glow plugs. This won't actually work for the glow plugs right now, but I'm going to make it work. The standard relay has two outputs, 87 and 87A. 87A is on all the time and only turns off when it's triggered. 87 is off all the time and only hits when it's triggered. This connector only has 87A. It doesn't have 87, which means if I use this relay, the glow plugs will be on all the time unless I turn them off. And I don't want that. These terminals have a small groove underneath them. You take something thin, and you can use a wire or a screwdriver if you have one small enough, and just press that in the groove. There's a little tab on these that lock them into place. Now we can move from 87A to 87. There, locks in place. Now this is set up to be normally off and only turns on when it's triggered. So now we can use it for our glow plugs. I've got my relay installed and wired up. This is a ground wire for the trigger system, so all I need is power to trigger it. It'll turn the glow plugs on. Speaking of grounds, I want to show you this. This wire is one of the factory grounds that I cut off. I didn't loosen that up. This is the way it was. A loose ground is bad enough. Take a look at this. It's grounded to something with a rubber washer on it. And that something is a plastic insert. I'm using the holes for the original fuse panel. They bolted to these brackets, which means whoever was trying to figure out the wiring didn't even see this ground because it was behind the panel. I'm glad I'm putting all new wiring in, and wiring that makes sense and you can see. I went up a bunch of sizes on the wire to the alternator. The main power goes through a circuit breaker. That then feeds a fuse panel that's easy to see. That feeds the glow plug relay we already talked about. Get a power going to the dashboard area for a starter switch. I've got two other wires also going to the dashboard area. Going to these switches here. Then to an old extension cord in the back of the truck. We'll talk about these later. The immediate thing I need to do is deal with all these switches lying around. Now I found this switch in this panel, and it has holes for other switches, and I could just bolt this right in. But that's so low it makes the switches go horizontally. I want them to go vertically. So I need to make some kind of panel to hold all this stuff. Mini dashboard. Got switch mounts and mounting holes. Angle. I took a piece of flat stock, popped a hole in it, and rounded off the ends. I cut the end of that flat bar off to make a tab, and we're going to weld it onto the dashboard bit. Threw a coat of paint on it, and now I have a complete dashboard. I also added a tab with a grounding stud, so now any other future grounds I need can go right there. Right now these gauges are just hanging by a piece of baling wire. They're all hooked up. I haven't seen the temperature gauge move at all, but the scale looks almost totally useless. It starts at 170, and there's 190. Ideally, my temperature range is going to be right at the bottom of the scale. If we ever get anywhere near any of these numbers, I already have the steam burning me, so I know it's there. So I don't know if I'm going to keep those gauges in here, but for now, I'm keeping the baling wire, because they might go soon. So now all we have is a main power switch, a voltmeter showing our voltage. Got glow plugs with an indicator light, starter button, and our two switches we're going to talk about later. After that fun little side adventure, we got to get back to hooking up our alternator. I've hooked up a lot of external regulators, and usually my go-to is this one. That's a standard Mopar style one. It has only two connections. One always has power and is connected to one of the terminals, the center one. The other one grounds out the field, and that switches on and off to get the voltage right. Doesn't even matter which way you hook these up because they're isolated from the case. Alternators all work on the same basic principle. The belt from your engine spins this part, which is a spinning coil of wire. Electricity going to these contacts makes this create a magnetic field, and that spins around inside this coil of wire. The magnetic field spinning inside this coil of wire creates an electric current in it, which then gets spit out to your battery. A voltage regulator turns this field on and off to keep the voltage from going too high. In the case of this alternator, the field connection is a positive input to create that magnetic field. The ground connection is the negative input. That ground terminal is also connected to the case, so this is going to be grounded no matter what. So that style regulator won't work. We can't switch the negative on and off, we have to switch the positive. I found this diagram online with no source listed, but it sure looked good. Now I'm not going to go and buy a new one if I can find one that I can try out just to see if it works. This truck hasn't run in 20 years. A little while longer won't hurt. Yeah, maybe. There we go. Someday I gotta get this one going. But there's our voltage regulator. I was gonna do a note to my future self to remind me that one of the mounting bolts had a ground on it and a capacitor. The capacitor appears to have an issue. The wire is completely missing. Maybe it's a good thing I'm stealing this. I would never have seen this problem otherwise. Got my wiring all ready to go. I got the Ford regulator bolted to the frame and wired up to the Chinese alternator. We got charging. Been charging for a while and holding steady. Oil pressure looks great. Temperature gauge is still at 170 where it starts. Let's see if we got the color matching this door anywhere close to right. Doesn't line up at all. The door is too low on that striker. Too big of a gap up top. Too small of a gap on the bottom. I'm going to add some shims under this hinge and see what that does. I'm sure I have some body shims around here somewhere. Fuel filters? Need that someday. Someday I'll clean. Maybe. Hey. There's one of the bolts for the half track. This is what held the whole body together, all that armor plating. Ever notice that shelves that collect stuff have a strata? As you dig down, you remember old projects you did back then at that time period? Or down about to the layer where I took apart the S10. Ah, here we go. Body shims. I knew I had some. Ooh, the ones with a handle, even better. I knew I had these here somewhere. These are made especially for adjusting body panels where they bolt to the vehicle. These are U-shaped, so you can loosen the bolt but don't have to take it off all the way. Sometimes a magnet helps. You can fish these in there, pull the body panel away, and slide them up and under. Now we have this spaced out, and all we have to do is tighten up the bolts. Now let's see where we're at. Gap doesn't look half bad. Looks okay up top. Bottom looks fine. That is definitely good enough. One thing I'm not sure if it's good enough is the paint in that door. It's better than the bright yellow. It's better than the white down the front. I'll have to think about that. I've seen these air jacks advertised a lot lately. I wasn't really sure if they're a good idea, but they're cheap, so I bought one. Whoa, way too high. Put that down a little. Not the most secure thing I've ever seen. It does do the job at least. But I prefer my hydraulic jack. I found two tires that actually held air and didn't look too dry rotted. One was the spare and one of the inner duals. So I'm going to swap out these front tires, but before I do, I'm going to grease up this front end. Because everything else was assembled wrong, including a dry injector pump. They probably didn't grease the front end. The whole time I've been working on this truck, I've been continually shocked by the complete lack of care they did when they assembled it. I've never seen something assembled so badly. It's a good thing I'm working on greasing up this front end. I found a broken fitting. Had to take it out. This fitting is absolutely perfectly clean. I know for sure now, no one ever greased this truck. It was sent to the customer with absolutely no grease in the front end whatsoever. Luckily I got a drawer full of spare fittings. I found one that'll fit. Now I'll get some grease in here, and it'll be another way this truck will be better than factory. Luckily the factory set a pretty low bar. It's real easy to do better than them, just adding grease. I broke out the 3D printer again to make myself a rain cap. So now the air will go up and around, but the rain won't go straight in. I'm gonna throw a coat of paint on before I reinstall. As I was reassembling the door panels, I noticed that around the door pull area, there's a crack on either side. This panel's held in with one small screw and washer in that hole. So when you hold there and pull on the door handle, the whole thing flexes and cracks right there. Looking at the inner panel, there's my original hole. I've got a flat area here and a flat area there, and some scrap metal. Right about that long. They kind of look like a piece of trim. Don't see the panel flexing anymore. It's better. I should probably get around to doing something about all this broken glass. This is the original passenger seat for this mini truck. Even has a little flip-up center so you can get to the engine to work on it. But it's in fairly poor condition. It would need a little bit of refurbishing to make it comfortable. So I stole the driver's seat out of the yellow truck. This one's in a lot better shape. These front seats just attached with two bolts going straight through the floor. This side has a flap. This side doesn't. Yet. Now it does. Access hole is a good way to tighten down the bolts too. These seats are a little bit rough and the padding is a bit worn. I bought the cheapest seat covers I could find. Now these are a one-piece seat cover, but they're going on a two-piece seat. This bottom part has to be removable so you can get to this access panel. Luckily, that's really easy to take care of. Somewhere around here should do. Now I'm going to take my two-piece seat cover, put the bottom part over the bottom part. Like it's meant to do this. This has all sorts of elastics attached to it to pull it taut. So I'm going to use those, run one through another, sort of tie the whole thing together. Got some hog rings, installation pliers. Not very good installation pliers, but they're the cheap ones. I'm going to try to catch the seam in the back, give it a little more structure. The other side. Going to run the elastic into the ring. Oops, and lose it. All right, try that again. Got the elastic in the ring. And let's bring it over here and catch the seam. The elastic's attached to a few seams that actually should be pretty sturdy. And the bottom piece is done. These seats do flip forward somewhat. The back part of the cover is way too big for this seat. So I'm going to tighten it up a little using pretty much the same trick. Find a seam that'll be sturdy. Find another seam, kind of cram them together, and put a hog ring through the whole thing. We'll grab this in a few spots to give it more even and professional look. 3 is probably a good amount. Grab the bottom with another one so it can't come sliding up. And there we go. The interior is basically better than new, probably. I'm going to try to do something about this white paint in the front. Looks like someone threw a can of paint at the windshield in frustration and it all dripped down. Which I can totally understand seeing how this truck was built. This brush guard is my way of doing that, and it's fairly mangled. Goes way away from the front end there and actually hits the body here. The bottom part is also mangled. And then the center part, that's bent too. There's been a lot of pushing. But it's not this truck pushing anything. It was this truck being pushed. If an ATV pushing on flat ground could do that much damage, this is too flimsy for me. Wow. This thing weighs nothing. I think less than the door. That's coming off pretty easy. Huh. The water actually seems to have softened this stuff up. I probably should get around to putting the windshield in at some point soon. bumps are gone, just the color's left. Gotta keep reminding myself, this is just a work truck. This will be fine. I definitely need something windshield-like here. You may have noticed I put this bar here already. Having trouble seeing the junction, but I just welded all over the general area. We'll grind down flat, it'll be fine. Got the welds ground down, gonna erase it a little further. That goes right to where the original windshield mounted and prevents me from installing the factory one, which is a good thing, because the factory one was bad. Not particularly sturdy. It was definitely not safety glass, it was more in-your-face glass. So we're gonna do something different. I'm gonna install this. This is a roll of polycarbonate sheet. They say it's good for replacing windows. And it's definitely flexible. This roll was like 8 feet long or so I lopped off a few feet just to make it a little easier to deal with. Already I'm regretting pre-cutting part of it. It looks like there's a wavy section to the side here, and that side's a lot cleaner. Well, no, it's a bit wavy here too. This is not the pristine, smooth, clear surface I was promised. Basically, this isn't really a good windshield, but it should keep animals out. So that's something. But I think this side's better. So the driver gets the better side. Now the smart thing to do would be to do a rough outline that's close, lock it into position, and then trim along the edge to get the best fit possible. So what I'm going to do is just directly attach it and assume I'll be able to trim it all later. I'm going to start with the passenger side first. That way if I make a mistake, I won't have to see it as often. Never had a windshield you could cut with scissors before. I'm going along attaching screws, alternating top to bottom, to try to keep most of the wrinkles out. And that's it. Now I have a windshield that's mostly flat and mostly see-through. And it should keep animals from living inside the truck. And for a yard truck like this, there's a term for it. Oh yeah, good enough. I've been trying to convince myself that this truck doesn't need a coat of paint because it's just a work truck and really it's gonna be fine. But myself made some good points. Not only do I have multiple extra colors of paint on here, the factory paint was so bad it's actually down to bare metal in some places already. Quite a few places. And as usual, the factory did so badly, it won't be hard to improve it. So I compromised with myself and said I'm going to paint it, I'm going to do it badly. I'm not going to fix any of the dents at all, and I'm going to do it with a rattle can. With the fresh paint, you can see dents a little more, but no more bare metal. And the door is the same color now. The side mirrors are absolutely terrible. Pretty much all the reflective stuff is gone. You can actually see the dirt inside the mirror through the glass, because it's not a mirror anymore. Not a single one of them's any good. I tried an experiment using this really shiny spray paint and painting the inside of the mirror, but it didn't work particularly well. Since I already cut out windshield with scissors, why not the door mirrors? This is the one I painted with the chrome paint. I broke it taking it out. We'll just piece it back together a little bit. Something like that. I'm reflecting in my own eyes here. I don't know if I'm getting you guys, but the lights are going in my eyes. Apparently this is pretty reflective. That's not too bad. Yeah, looks like a mirror. Had to glue the signal light lenses back together because of course they were both broken. When I was cleaning out the bed of this truck, I found a set of headlight lenses. I tried hosing them off already, but they're pretty dirty. There's a tool that's perfect for this kind of thing. We'll just slide these right near the back. Now the paint's mostly dry, I get the fun of putting everything together. That's when it starts to look like a truck again. Got those headlight lenses. They didn't come out great. Even with a little hand scrubbing, they didn't really clean up entirely. But they're way better than nothing. And the factory put in an adhesive and just stuck the lens on there. Out of the 2 trucks, so 4 headlights total, not a single one stayed. So I'm going to repeat the process of adding some goop in there to make it sticky. Then we're going to cram the lens in there and hope it stays. Then I'm going to do one extra step the factory didn't do. My standard practice now, 3D print a part and then paint it. We're going to put some pieces over top to hold these lenses in. The bottom, it looks like I have room to sneak a bolt right through to the inside. That'll be better. Since it sort of looked like a cat eye here, I sort of went with a cat eye theme. I think my daughter will like that. Between coats, I finished up the last tire. So now we have some small but sturdy capabilities. Well, that's it for this video. I'm pretty happy with this truck now. This ended up taking a lot more effort than I expected because there's a lot of stuff that was wrong with this, and it looks like most of it was wrong from the factory. This thing never worked properly. I could see why it has so few miles. In my head, I keep thinking 67 miles, because that's what the odometer says. I can remember that's kilometers. I've been watching that roll over so I know it works. I'm up to 67.4. That's 42 miles total. I can only imagine what the original owner felt like, because they had to have bought this new, and they obviously didn't drive it very much, and it was terrible. The key tag in my yellow truck came with a price on it, and that was a single wheel truck. This dually with the fancy brush guard and all that, I bet was a lot more. So someone bought this thing, paid probably close to 10 grand for it. The fuel lines pulled air instead of fuel. The electrical system was grounded to plastic, and had never been greased or lubricated or anything. I could understand why the original owner might have thrown a bucket of paint through the windshield and then let it sit in a field for 20 years. But we've got almost all of that taken care of. I'm planning on using this around a dirt yard, so it's going to do a lot of driving in dirt and hauling heavy things. I want something sturdy and reliable and simple. That's the hot idle oil pressure. This engine's in good shape. And it's small and maneuverable enough to get anywhere I want to go, and it's probably pretty fuel efficient with that diesel in there. So I'm really excited to put this thing to work. I still need to put a bed back on it in order to make it actually useful. We'll get to that in a future video. I just ran out of time on this one. For me, this is better than it was when it was new. Everything's simpler. I replaced it with parts that actually work, and some of the stuff like the regulator, I can just buy off the shelf at a parts store now. So this is going to be perfect for my needs. Even the things I did badly, like the paint job, at least it has paint on everything now without bare metal exposed. The windshield, that's my least favorite thing I did. I don't mind the thin plastic, but that plastic was real poor quality and was not clear like it was supposed to be. I'll replace that at some point in the future, but for now it keeps the animals out and I can drive with it. But even with that, the original windshield broke into a zillion pieces and could come flying at you if it ever broke. So even the windshield arguably is better than what the factory provided. So this thing is much better, and I had a lot of fun getting it there. Hope you're having fun too, and we'll see you next time. Several times in this video I mentioned I'll talk about these two switches later. I'm not actually done with them yet, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'll give you a preview. This switch connects to that extension cord, and that connects to these two air solenoids. When you move the switch up, that one triggers. When you move the switch down, that one triggers. Remember that air jack I didn't like? I bought another one. When you move the switch up, it does that. This will come in handy when I finish up this truck. But I can't show you the rest yet because I haven't actually done it. So that's all I got for now. Move the switch the other way, the air lets out. It'll go faster with some weight on it.